All right. Good afternoon, everyone. It's 1:02 Eastern Time. Thank you for being here. My name is Pablo Avila from the Center for Teaching and Learning. I have my colleague Mutaz here who will be helping me keep track of the chat. If you are joining us from your computer, hopefully you are joining us from a desktop. I invite you to take a look at the chat. And if you could just put your name, the department where you come from, and if you want to share what courses you're teaching, that'd be great as well. So in the chat at the bottom of your screen, if you don't mind going ahead and putting your first name, your department affiliation, and if you could share the courses that you're teaching, that'd be great. We are recording this session so that we can make it available to everyone who is able to, who was not able to attend. The first thing that we're going to do in this session is going to be going over how to create recurring meetings on Zoom. And then we're going to talk about breakout rooms, which is something that a lot of faculty seem to be interested in. And then we're going to revisit a couple of additional features on Zoom, including the security ones. I'm seeing a lot of messages on the chat. Thank you all so very much. Welcome to everyone. I'm going to go and post in the chat a resource document, okay? If you can go ahead and on the chat, right where you put your name and your department affiliation, there will be a link to a document. That document is a document that it's available to everyone. And let me go ahead and also share my screen so that I can show exactly what the document looks like. And by the way, as we begin, if you have any questions as we move along, please put them on the chat. My colleague Mutas is going to keep track of those and will be helping me answer those questions as we move along in the session so that we can make sure that we answer as many of your questions as we can. All right. So what you're seeing in my screen is the resource document. I put the link on the chat. We realized that when putting together these sessions, there were plenty of resources we wanted to share. So we put it all in one document, okay? This is available. This is, you can share this with anybody else that you would like in your department, anywhere else. And this is being updated on an ongoing basis, okay? The first thing that you will find in the document are the sessions that we're running. All of the sessions will cover these three items: how to create a recurring meeting and how to create breakout rooms, and then an overview of the security features. And then underneath the resources, there's important documentation and information about security. You may have heard on the news or on Outlook that many events and across different CUNY colleges, unfortunately, have seeing unwelcomed guests that have disrupted the environment of the meetings, to say the least. So it's important to always keep in mind this information to keep your meeting safe. I'm not going to go over every single one of this in detail, but I will cover a couple of those in today's session. And I invite you to take a look at this in your own time later, okay? And then if you scroll down, you're gonna find a lot of different information about different features on Zoom that you can skim this, and if there's something that catches your interest, go ahead and go for it. The resources are available, okay? And then finally at the bottom, this is not the first time that we're running these sessions. The center has already offered sessions last year that cover about the same things, and you can access both the recordings and all the info from those sessions, because we're essentially repeating these sessions as we move along, okay? Again, this document is available on the chat, the link, so you can go ahead and keep that for your own reference. What we're gonna do is we are going to begin the session by logging into Zoom. And the way that I'm gonna run the session is I'm gonna do a demo of how you would do it. You are welcome to follow me. If you have any questions as you come across, please use the chat so that we can make sure that we answer all of your questions. There will be time from time to time when my colleague, I'm going to ask my colleague Mutaz to stop me at any time so that I can answer any questions that people may have, okay? So I mentioned let me go ahead and share my screen again. I mentioned that in today's session, we're going to begin by creating a recurring meeting. And let me go ahead and put this link on the chat. The link to log into our CUNY Zoom accounts is cuny.zoom.us. If you logged into your email this morning, you probably found many emails of people saying they could not log in this morning. Unfortunately, there was a system issue today, March 11, where CUNY users were not able to log in. However, that was resolved at around 9:30 Eastern time. So if you encounter anyone who had problems logging in, there was a system-wide issue, but it was resolved. If you go into this link, you will go ahead and see what you're seeing on my screen. And I go and I click on the sign in button. The moment that I click on the sign in button, it's going to ask me for my CUNY login credentials. Okay. And it's important to differentiate the CUNY login credentials. And let me show you very quickly in this link that I'm also going to be posting on the chat. This link has all the information IT put together, this resource with all of the information that especially new users may want to look into when logging into their CUNY Zoom accounts, okay? The CUNY login credentials are composed of the first name and the last name, and normally the 2 digits at login.cuny.edu. A lot of users I have come across, they normally confuse this with their Outlook credentials. They are not the same. So make sure that you are using your CUNY login credentials when logging into this page. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this, and I'm going to go ahead and enter my password. Again, the password is the CUNY first one, and my username is not my Outlook, it's my CUNY login credentials, first name, that last name, and the 2 digits. If you're not sure where where that information is, I recommend looking at this document closely. I put the link on the chat so that you can find out where to find your CUNY login credentials. Once you are in this page, you can always, a common problem that I've seen, uh, a common problem that I've seen in the when users logging into their CUNY Zoom accounts is that if the browser by default is somehow saving your credentials for a different account, it may redirect you there. So you can always double check that you are on the correct your CUNY account by the time you log in. You click on the top right, and you will be able to see your name, the CUNY login email address that you signed in with, and then the word licensed. And that means that you are in the correct CUNY login account, the CUNY account, all right? One of the main differences between a regular CUNY account, I'm sorry, a regular Zoom account and the account that's provided by CUNY, you may have heard that there was a 40-minute limit, a 40-minute difference in the basic accounts, the ones that you signed up for free. If you scheduled a meeting, you had a limit of 40 minutes only. In this case, in the licensed account, in the institutional accounts provided by CUNY, there's no such limit. So you can have, if you want, an hour, 2 hour, 3 hour classes if you like. Okay, that's one of the main differences. Other than that, the system functions and operates in the same manner. So if you're familiar with the previous, if you had a previous Zoom account and you're now using your CUNY account, there won't be much of a difference other than the time limits. Mutaz, do let me know in case there are questions in the chat, just so that I can address them as much as I can. All right.
Yeah, I believe there was a question from
Yep.
Professor Anderson
Yep.
about the HTTPS being before the URL address.
Thank you. Yeah.
And yeah,
Normally, if I simply opened my browser and I just type in cuny.zoom.us, there should not be any problems, but this depends on the browser. As long as you see the screen that you see right here, then there shouldn't be any problems. If I go ahead and press and I click on my URL, it won't show it to me. I'm using Google Chrome. In case that you are having any issues, as long as you see this screen, there shouldn't be any problem. Once you are in this page, you can simply click on signing, and then it will take you to your it will prompt you to log in. Okay. So Once in this page, what I'm going to do is this right here may not is it's not something you may see on your own account because these are all the meetings that I have. You may see probably one or you may see none. So so don't worry if you're not seeing all of this. So what I'm going to do now is on the menu on the left, I'm going to see a couple of options and I'm going to click on the one that says meetings. Okay. When I go ahead and click on meetings, we're going to get to the first item of our workshop today, and that is to create a recurring meeting. A lot of faculty think that they may have to create a meeting for every single week. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how you can create a recurring meeting for the entire semester so that you don't have to recreate a meeting and a link every week. By doing a recurring meeting, you're simply generating one single link that you will be able to share with your students in any way that you do, whether it's via email, whether it's via Blackboard, whether it's via ePortfolio, however you share with your students, you will be able to share one link. I'm going to go ahead and use the example of my own class. I teach a class on Saturdays. My class meets on Saturdays from 10 to 11. So I'm going to go ahead and give that example for the purposes of this training. You may be thinking of your own classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, Mondays and Wednesdays. It really varies by faculty. Okay. In the topic, I'm going to put the title of my class. There's no need to put the entire course ID or the entire title. As long as you have a signifier for your own purposes, that should be fine. If you're teaching a class and different sections, say HUA, HUC 101 morning section and HUC 101 afternoon session, you might want to put sort of like a signifier for your own purposes, but students are not going to see this. All you're going to need for the students is the URL, okay? I'm only teaching one class, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the EDF 101. I'm seeing just, I'm eyeballing a question on the chat about password. I can address all those questions later, but I do recommend checking this link that I'm going to go ahead and put again. This is a question about how do I get a password for my meeting ID. If you mean the password for your account, I would suggest looking at that link. If you're talking about the passcode for the meeting, we're gonna get to that in just a second, okay? So in here, I'm putting in EDF 101. And here's when I'm going to begin to do the recurring meeting. So where it says when, by the way, description is optional. Don't even worry about it. You don't have to put it. Under when, I'm going to go ahead and my class meets on Saturdays. I'm going to put the first day when this is going to meet. We already started, but for the purposes of this, I'm just going to go ahead and choose the 13th. My class meets at 10 a.m. So I'm just going to switch that to 10 a.m. Always make sure that you're switching AM, PM to AM. As many times when I've set up a meeting for 10 p.m. when I don't want that. Duration, we're only meeting for 1 hour. So don't worry that in the event that you put this meeting for 1 hour and you go beyond that, there's no problem. You will still be able to meet and go ahead and put it on and go on with your meeting, okay? Recurring meeting, and this is the part that's important. So I'm going to go ahead and check this off because I want to make sure that I set this up on a recurring basis. Okay, I'm going to, by default, the recurrence happens on a daily basis. I don't want that, so I'm going to go ahead and change that to weekly because I want to meet every week. And then I want this to repeat every single week. Unless you're meeting every other week, you can change that every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. But if not, you can leave it as 1 week, every week, in this case, Saturday.
There is a question, Pablo.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so Professor Anderson asked if we can schedule a recurring meeting for different days with different times. For example, Monday, 10:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m., and then Wednesday, 11:45 a.m. to 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Sorry. Yeah.
So what I have done in that case, let me take the second part, the first part of that question. You can set up a recurring meeting for multiple days. So let's say that this class is not meeting on Saturdays. Let's say that this class is meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I can always put the recurrence to be every week, meet every 1 week, and then it will repeat on Tuesdays and Thursdays, as long as I check this off, okay? In terms of the timing, I mentioned a moment ago that if you start at 10 a.m. and let's say that you go beyond the 1 hour, it will be fine. There will not be any problems. If you decide to start early, the same. there won't be any problem. So what I have suggested to faculty who may be teaching a class, say on Thursdays, from Tuesdays and Thursdays, Tuesdays from 11 to 1 and Thursdays from 11 to 2, then I would suggest go ahead and put it for the entire time. But for the purposes of your own class, you're going to follow your own class time on Tuesdays and then different time on Thursday. There really won't be much of a difference when it comes to the timing in the actual the timing of the um,
Pablo,
the class. Yes, yes,
I have a question.
yes.
My question is that in the past, what I used to do, I try to schedule the meeting and Zoom will only give me about 40 to 45 minutes per meeting. Is there any way I can make it to be 1 hour?
So like I mentioned, when we were logging in, one of
Mhm.
the main difference between the CUNY institutional license and the regular accounts, the regular Zoom accounts, that whether the free accounts that people were able to sign up for is the 40-minute limit. So when you are on this page right here, on this interface, and you're scheduling a meeting, uh, you schedule a meeting and you have the starting time and you can set the duration. If you are using a free account that is not affiliated with CUNY, then the restriction of the 40 minutes will apply. But in the case of using the CUNY accounts, the restriction will not apply because the CUNY licensed account will allow you to have unlimited times for the meetings. If you log into your account and you want to double check that you're in the correct account, you can always click on your profile on the top. And then if you see right here, it says my first name and last name, my CUNY email address, and it says licensed. And that tells me that I'm in the correct account. So unless you continue to see that issue, I'm happy to troubleshoot that on the side and make sure that I resolve that for you. Okay. So moving on right here, going back to the question that was asked, just to make sure that I address this as best as I can. If you're teaching a class on Tuesdays from 11 to 1 and Thursdays, the same class, but from 11 to 2, you can always put the timing to start at 11 and then check off right here, Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then even if you put the duration here that it's different from 11 to 2 on Tuesdays, when in reality you're meeting 11 to 1, you will still be able to open your meeting without any problems, okay? If you want to be extra careful and you want to be sure that you're doing everything correct, you can always set up 2 different recurring meetings, one for Tuesdays, one for Thursdays. I haven't had any problems when I've set up my meetings on a recurrent basis for 2 different dates when I am meeting at different times, as long as I put the duration for the longer periods, okay? I'm happy to troubleshoot on the side in case you need additional help setting that up, okay? So,
Pablo,
yeah,
may I ask just one question?
absolutely.
When we put in the times, are they always in even amounts? For example, our class starts at
Oh,
yeah, some classes
thank
9:15,
you, thank you.
11:45.
Thank you. Thank you. If you, by default, the intervals are 30 minutes here, but if you want to start 9:15, all you have to do is just type in 1-5
Okay.
and then just go ahead and type in, and then your class will begin at that time. Now in here, you cannot do that. You will always have the duration on 1 hour intervals. So let's say that you only want to set it up, for 1 hour and 45, you can always put 1 hour and 45 minutes, right? But if not, again, if you set this up to be 1 hour duration, and in the end you decide to go longer than that, Zoom it's not going to cut you off, okay? Unless you manually end the meeting, there won't be any problems, okay? So again, if you choose any timing here and you want to choose a specific minute, all you can do is simply typing 9:15 and simply click on the timing, and then you will be able to begin the class at 9:15. Okay. So,
There was one more question, Pablo. I think it was a quick question. It's
yep,
about using the personal room for the meeting.
the personal room. It takes a little bit more time to go over the personal meeting ID, the personal meeting room. We're gonna get to that in. I think it's. Oh no, it's not here. I personally wouldn't recommend to use a personal meeting room because it is your specific number that never changes. If you want to make sure that students are not able to access that single meeting all the time, then I wouldn't recommend it. I always find it better to generate a random meeting ID when you schedule a meeting that is not necessarily your personal meeting room. This is more related to security. You can very well set up your classes with your own personal meeting ID. There will not be any difference other than the students always knowing where to find you. Okay, so if you want that, if you don't have any problems with that, setting up the personal meeting room on a recurrent basis shouldn't be a problem. I personally choose to always generate a specific meeting ID that's separate from that when I schedule my own classes, okay? So in here, after I choose the recurring, and I want this to happen on a weekly basis, in my case on a Saturday, if you're teaching Tuesdays and Thursdays, you do the same. Now I have two options to end this recurrence. I'm enabling this recurrence and I need to make sure that I tell Zoom when to stop doing this. So I have two options. I can either choose a specific date or I can simply tell Zoom run 10 or 12 recurring meetings of this and then stop whenever that happens. So I'm going to choose the first option because I think it's the easiest. I know classes end on June 7th. So if that is a Monday, that means my last class will be on the 5th, okay? That is on the academic calendar. I'm doing this for the purposes of the example. You may very well choose a different date. Since I'm choosing this, I don't have to worry about the second option, okay? The registration, yeah,
I
question?
believe there might be a question from Catherine Costa.
Yeah. Catherine, I think, yes, go ahead and I'm not seeing the raise your hand functionality, so that's why my colleague Mutaz is helping with the chat, but Catherine, go ahead. Catherine, I think
muted, yeah.
you're muted. So if you can unmute and
She needs to unmute. You have to tell her to unmute. And
Yeah,
now we can hear you. Go ahead.
I actually, you answered it, but how do I change it now? Because I only got the 7 occurrences from my classes and it went to the 24th. So I can just click edit somewhere and go back and change it?
I'm going to show you that
Oh,
means that I'm going to show you how you can see the full occurrences, and I'm going to show you how to delete one or how to add one. And it seems that that's the option you're looking for.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Okay. I mentioned about registration. When you are doing an event and you want other people from the college to sign up and get the Zoom link, it's very helpful to enable the registration. I haven't encountered many faculty that use the registration for the purposes of a class. As long as you set this up, if you generate a one link and you share that internally with your students, there shouldn't be any need to use this, okay? The passcode, which I believe was one of the questions a moment ago about meeting password, Zoom labels that as a passcode, okay? So that means essentially if a student is trying to enter a meeting, they are given a passcode so that they can enter and add an extra layer of security to the meeting. So you can enable that. I highly recommend, and you can even change the passcode to be something else. So let's say that you want the passcode to be something that you always remember. So that way, if a student asks, then you don't have to be, oh my God, where is that passcode? I have to go find it. You can always, put something that you will always remember and then give it to students. So I always recommend doing this. The waiting room, for instance, if you're familiar with the waiting room, this is like a virtual waiting room and like someone knocking on your door and then you're just seeing who that is. The waiting room is essentially the students enter the meeting, but they are not able to enter the meeting directly. They simply are knocking the door and then the host will be prompted and say, so-and-so is on the waiting room waiting to be admitted, and you can let them in manually. You can let each student in. That may be a little cumbersome if you have 25, 27 students. You can admit multiple people all at once. This is really up to you if you want to be in the habit of admitting people. And if you want to be extra careful with who's coming to your class, I would recommend enabling this. I personally, but I'll say this personally, do not use the waiting room because I share my links with my students only. So again, this is an option up to you. But I'm going to show you how during the meeting you are able to enable this during the meeting. So it's not like if you don't enable this right now, you're never going to be able to enable it. I'm going to show you how you can enable that later, okay? For the video and the host, this essentially is the default mode of the video when they enter the meeting. I always choose to have it off both for the host and for the participant off. But this means that when I enter the meeting and when they enter the meeting, the video will be by default off. However, every user, including the host, is able to manually turn that on. Okay, so only because you're choosing off here doesn't mean that you're going to eliminate their ability to turn their video on. They will always be able to turn it on. Okay, under audio, I always recommend leaving the default option, which is both. If you choose only computer audio, you're restricting your students who may be joining from a telephone. So you might want to consider that. I personally always leave the default option as both because I want my students to join from wherever they are able to. And then lastly, on the last part, mute participants upon entry, it's always helpful because they may bring background noise and they may not be familiar with how to mute themselves. So I always choose to mute participants upon entry. But similar to this option right here, they are able to unmute themselves and they are able to speak up if they want to. Only because you choose this doesn't mean that they're going to be muted for the entire session. Okay. And I also choose the allow participants to join at any time. And I don't do this just to let them know that they can come in late, not at all, but I always choose this because I understand some students, especially those who are new, may not be familiar with Zoom and may have technical difficulties and may have to join a little later after they troubleshoot anything. So I always choose this and make sure that I am inclusive of them, okay? The rest of the session, the rest of the options, you don't have to worry about at the scheduling part. I'm going to show you how to set up the breakout rooms once I share my Zoom interface. And after I've gone over all of this, all I can go ahead and do is hit save, and then my meeting will be created. For the purposes of this, I already created this and I want to show you what it looks like. And here, I think I'm going to answer, I think, Catherine's question. So after you hit save, what's going to happen is Zoom is going to take you to this page. It's going to show you the result of what you schedule. In my case, I put my entire code right here, and take a look at this where it says time. Now I can see that it all started last week, and I can click on show all occurrences. And if in show all occurrences, what I see is every single occurrence that I have created, and I have the option to either edit a single one or delete two as well. In my case, I deleted two because these are the dates from spring break, so I know we're not going to meet them. Now, to Catherine's question at the bottom, I can always add another session. So if you created fewer sessions that you intended to, you can always click on the add another session and it will generate another one following the recurrence that you set up originally. Okay.
So if I have to do it till June 6th, I just keep adding different days? Is that how it works? Keep clicking?
Correct. You simply add another session, and then you will be able to add another one following the recurrence that you set this up. In my case, I set this up to be every Saturday at 10 a.m. for 1 hour.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if I go right here, if I scroll down, I'm going to see the invite link. And then in the invite link, what I'm going to see is a single link. And this is the one link that I mentioned at the beginning. I don't have to worry about sharing a link every single week. All I have to do is share this one single link with my students. And I can do this in multiple ways, and this will vary by how you share information with your students. You can do it through email. You can do it through an announcement on Blackboard. You can do it through a section on Blackboard. However it is that you do it, you go ahead and share that with your students. I put that in an announcement, in an email, and on my Blackboard course, but that's my personal choice, okay? When you share that information with your students, when you share this, all you would have to share is only this single link. And then in this single link right here, you go ahead and share that with them. And if you want to be extra cautious, because the students are not going to be able to, students are going to be able to join your meeting using that link. If you're extra cautious, you can always give them the passcode, which by default is hidden. But if you hit show right here, you will be able to copy that and paste it. And essentially what you're telling them, your students, is here's the one link. Every single Saturday, in my case at 10 a.m., log into Blackboard, you're going to find this link posted on this section of Blackboard, and you're going to click on it and you're going to join our sessions. In the event, and I'm sure you've seen this Zoom invites everywhere. In the event that you want to share the full Zoom information, you can always go in here and copy the invitation, and you're going to see all of this, right? And this is what you've seen, I'm sure, in other cases. You can go ahead and copy that and then email it if you want. But again, the only two things that are important for you to show, to share, I'm sorry, is this link and the passcode, okay? And that is, let me do a quick stop here, but that is essentially how you create your recurring meetings. The next thing we're gonna do is I'm gonna share my Zoom interface so that you're able to see everything. But I wanna know if there are any questions. So let me go ahead and stop my screen now. So Mutas, are there any questions?
I don't see any new questions on the chat unless someone else has a question that they haven't asked yet.
Anybody?
Can I talk?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yes.
Go ahead. Yes.
One question. If the students have the link and the passcode, I don't need to email it every week because it's going to be the same for all the semester?
Correct, correct, absolutely. So since you are setting up the meeting on a recurrent basis, you can send that one link, and you might want to mention to your students, use this one link every week on this day and this time to join our classes. What I personally do is I put that on my Blackboard course right on the top that says Zoom link. So that way they're not able to mistakenly click on anything else. And I tell them every week, on Saturdays, I want you to log into Blackboard, go into our sessions tab. That's how I put it on my Blackboard, and click on this link. That will get you to the meeting, correct? Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. So let me go ahead and move along here. Now, what I'm going to do, the next thing is I'm going to share my Zoom interface. And I'm going to share my Zoom interface for the purposes of demonstrating the Zoom controls, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and hit share. This is my, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm sharing now my entire Zoom interface so that you're able to see the Zoom controls. The Zoom controls are all the way at the bottom of my screen that you are able to see. These are the Zoom controls for the host. In this case, I am the host and you all are the participants. So I'm going to show you what those controls look like so that you are able to navigate your own Zoom meetings when you run your classes, okay? The first tip that I want to mention is the view of your screen. If you notice on the top right, you see a couple of options under when I click on view. If I put on speaker, it will spotlight one single colleague, in this case, Marilyn. But if I switch to gallery, then I'm able to see more screens. And this is not the same, but it's quite the equivalent of reading your class when you're in a physical space, right? When you stand in front of the class and you're seeing everything. This is a little bit close to that. Obviously, pending that all of your students are able to turn their cameras on if you give them the option to, right? So the gallery view is important. So what I'm going to cover now is the breakout rooms. And then I'm going to show a couple of other features, but let's focus on the breakout rooms now. So the breakout rooms is going to be at the bottom of my screen. And again, you may not see this in your own window right now because you are a participant in my meeting space. I'm showing, that's the purpose of me showing you this, my Zoom control, so that you can see what it looks like for the host. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the breakout rooms. When I click on breakout rooms, I'm going to see these options right here. There's 3 options that I'm going to see. And Mutaz, you're able to see my screen with the breakout room window, right? Okay. So,
Yes. Yeah, I'm able to.
So in here, what I'm going to do is I have 3 options, and I can either assign my students automatically, meaning at random. If I have 25 students, Zoom will assign them at random. I can assign people manually if I want to. I'm going to show how to do that in just a moment. Or I can simply create my rooms and then let my students choose by themselves. I teach a first year seminar course for education, and there's 4 tracks on the education program. So sometimes I create different rooms for each major, and I tell students, if you want to learn about this major, go to this room and so forth. That's an example of an activity how you may want to let students choose the room. For the purposes of this activity, I'm going to choose the first one, assign automatically. Nothing is happening for you, the participants. Everything is happening for the host, only behind the scenes. So notice that when I click on create breakout rooms, I can choose as many rooms as I want. And then Zoom, it's automatically counting how many people there are in my room, and then automatically adjusting the number of people in those rooms. Like I said a moment ago, you can have up to 49 breakout rooms. So there's no need to limit yourself. You can have as many breakout rooms as you want, up to 49. Okay. For the purposes of this, I'm going to choose 4 rooms, and I'm going to go ahead and click on create. Nothing happened for you, the participants, but in my case, for the host, this is what I now see. Okay. I told Zoom to create the rooms and assign people automatically. So, and I told Zoom I want 4 rooms. You figure out who to put in each room. So that's exactly what Zoom did. In my case, I see room number 1 with my 4 colleagues right here, and so forth. A couple of things that I want to show you here. First, you can always rename the rooms. Let's say that you want to just to go ahead and put team A and not room 1, and then this team B, and you get the idea. It's a straightforward. You can always rename, and then when you're having a discussion with your students, you can tell them, okay, what about team C? What do you got to say? I always tell my students which rooms they are going to be in, and I always tell them with who they are going to be. Okay, that's my personal choice. That's something that you may want to consider, but it's totally up to you how you structure your activities, breakout rooms. Okay, that's what I do in my classes. So I can rename my rooms if I want to. Now, when I ask Zoom to assign people automatically, I will find 2 options: the move to or the exchange. Okay, the move to is essentially, let's say that I have my colleague Joseph right here. And I actually want my colleague Joseph to not be on team A, but I want him to be on team B. So I can go ahead and move him to a team B, and I can do a couple of rearrangements like that if I want to. The exchange is essentially the swapping. So let's say that I actually want my colleague Mutaz and I want to exchange that with my colleague Francine. So Mutaz will go from team A and exchange from Francine. Now they are swapped, and I can again make those kinds of minor arrangements. I actually want my colleague Joseph back to team A so that it's even. So I can go ahead and click on move to, and then move him back to team A. So that's how you can rearrange your teams if you want even number across the board respectively, right? Let's see, any questions so far? Let's see, I don't see any questions so far, so let me go ahead and move along. In the breakout rooms, and again, nothing has happened right now. There's no breakout room opened because what I'm showing you is what's happening for the host, okay? So I'm going to show you now the options before I show you how to open these breakout rooms. So in the lower left hand side of this panel, you're going to find the gear button where you're going to see the options for the breakout rooms. Remember that at the beginning when I clicked on breakout rooms, I saw the 3rd option was allow participants to join a room, to choose a room. Even when I'm asking students to be in a room, I'm assigning them already, I can always enable this option if I want them to join any groups that they want. Okay, this is up to you. So the second option is allow participants to return to the main session at any time. And essentially, once you send your students to the breakout room, if you want them to come back to the main room because they either don't want to be in the breakout room or they just don't like it or whatever, you can enable that option for them. If you do not choose this option, if you leave it unchecked, essentially students are going to be stuck in the breakout room until you manually close those rooms. Okay, that's what this means. And then I always recommend choosing the 3rd option, automatically move all assigned participants into breakout rooms. Why? Because that way it facilitates the moving process, the student from the main session, which is this, to the breakout room. If you do not choose that, what's going to happen is when you open the breakout room, the student is going to be prompted with a small window in front of him that says, the so-and-so host is inviting you to a breakout room. Click here to join. And if the student does not click on anything, the student will never end up on the breakout room. So a lot of the students who may be new to the system, the platform, may not know how to respond to that. So if I choose this option, automatically move all assigned participants into breakout rooms, they don't have to click on anything. And the moment that I click on open rooms, they will be automatically teletransported into the room that I want them to be, okay? So I always recommend using this, especially if you're working with students who may be new to the platform. And then at the bottom, a couple of other options. A auto close breakout room. If you want to time your breakout room, let's say that you forget about the time, and that always happens to me. I tell my students, we're going to be in the breakout room for 20 minutes, and then I forget. I just miscount the time. If you want to be extra cautious, you can always time the breakout room for, like, 15, 20 minutes. And then what's going to happen at the end of the 20-minute count, Zoom is going to prompt you as the host with a pop-up window that says, hi host, your time is up for the breakout room. Do you want to close them now? And then you can click yes, and then the breakout rooms will be closed. And finally, the countdown. I'm sure that you've experienced this already, however many times we've been on Zoom since last year in March. When you're in a breakout room and you as the host close the breakout rooms, you can give the students the option to either be moved back to the main room automatically, or you can give them all the way from 10 to 120 seconds. If you do not choose this, when you click on the option close rooms, they will be moved to the main room. And if they were in the middle of saying something, they will be interrupted and they will be teletransported to the main room. And then sometimes that's a little disruptive. I always give my students 60 seconds and I tell them, when I close the breakout rooms, they see a pop-up window that says your breakout room time will end in 60, 59, 58, 57. And when it gets to 0, then it moves the students to the main session. And at least that gives them a hint that they need to wrap up, okay? Any questions so far? Let me stop here.
Yeah, don't see questions on the chat just yet.
Okay, so
Pablo,
yeah,
this
yes,
is Avis. When you
yes,
assign the breakout rooms, do you move from one room to another? For example, sometimes I'll have 3 breakout rooms and I'll go
yes,
from
yes,
one and make
yes,
sure they're doing something and what they're doing, and then go to another to monitor and so on.
yes. And that's exactly what I'm gonna get into. I'm gonna go ahead and click on the recreate button, and I'm gonna go ahead and choose the second option. And for the second option, it's gonna be assigned manually, okay? And I'm gonna choose that, and then I'm gonna demonstrate how to open the breakout rooms without moving anyone into the breakout room, so that I can show you what Avis was mentioning a moment ago. So I'm gonna go ahead and choose 4 breakout rooms, and I'm gonna hit recreate. Now what Zoom did is Zoom said to me, okay, Pablo, you want 4 rooms without anyone? You're gonna take care of that. Here's your 4 rooms, okay? There's nobody on this room, okay? Now I see the button assign. And when I click on the button assign, I essentially see the list of all my participants. And I can go ahead and quickly check the names of those that I want to be in room 1, and then do the same for room number 2. And then I will populate my breakout rooms as I want. This is when you want specific people in specific teams, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and uncheck this. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate how you open the breakout rooms. Nothing is gonna happen to you because you're not gonna see anything, but I'm going to go ahead and after I'm done assigning everyone to the room, I'm gonna see the button at the bottom that says open all rooms. If I'm ready, once you're ready to do that in your class, I'm gonna go ahead and click on open rooms. So now what you're seeing on my screen is I see, first of all, the section unassigned. You can skip that. That's essentially because I purposely did not assign anyone because I didn't want to move anyone into the breakout room. So I see the 14 people haven't been assigned to a breakout room. And then in here, I see my 4 rooms. And if I see this button right here, if there were people in it, I can pull down my list as I do in here, and then I will be able to see who is in each room. And then to Avis's comment a moment ago, if I hover to the right, I will be able to see the join button, and then I will be able to join their group if I want to. And if I click yes, I will be moved into the breakout room. And then what's going to happen is, if you take a look at the lower right-hand side of my screen, I see the end button. And right now it says the end because this is the main room, this is the meeting. If I am on a breakout room, that button is going to turn into a blue button that's going to say leave breakout room. And then I'm on the breakout room, and when I am done speaking to that particular group, I'm going to click on breakout room, and I'm going to come back to the main room. You don't necessarily have to come back from a breakout room to the main room to go to another room, because you as the host can always click on the breakout room. And if you are on room number 1, you can click on breakout room and then go into join room number 2, and then click yes when it says join room number 2. Okay. I wanted to show you the broadcast message to all, and essentially this button, it's right here. If you click at the bottom, you will see the broadcast message to all. It doesn't say here, but this only allows you to enter a certain number of characters. It's almost like a tweet. So if you want to use this for a prompt for your students to discuss, I don't recommend that. I normally use this when I tell my students we have 3 more minutes. And I simply type that in, and then when I hit broadcast, that is a message that will appear on the top to everyone in every single room. You're not seeing that right now because you're in the main room. You're not in the breakout room, okay? I'm demonstrating what the host controls look like when you open the breakout rooms, okay? It's gonna look like this, with the only difference that you may not see anybody unassigned because you have obviously put everyone into a group. And if you pull down the menu for each of them, you're gonna see every single one of them, and you're gonna be able to join them. In the event that a student gets disconnected and it's working on a group and suddenly gets disconnected, and the student tries to join the meeting again, he or she will be able to join the meeting again. But the only difference is that the student will jump into the main room and not directly into the breakout room. So essentially what it's going to happen is you're going to see the student right here as under unassigned. And you're going to see this, instead of 14, you're going to see 1. And you can always pay attention to that, because in the breakout room, if you notice at the bottom, it says 14. And that's because I haven't assigned 14 people to a breakout room. So I can go ahead and, let's say that I want to move someone into a breakout room. Quite intuitive. I have someone, I can always, let's say my colleague Paulette, I can assign her into any room. And if I click on it, she will be sent directly into the breakout room. Okay. So I can go ahead, pretending that my breakout room time went great. I'm going to go ahead and click on close all rooms. And because I didn't give anybody a countdown, everybody was virtually teletransported to the main room. You didn't see anything happening for you because, again, I didn't purposely put you into a breakout room so that you didn't, so that we didn't disrupt the session. And that's essentially it about breakout rooms. Let me make another stop here before I continue with the last 10 minutes and ask if anybody has any questions. No questions? Okay. I personally do my breakout room activities no less than 15 minutes because I realize, and this varies by class, obviously, but I realize that it takes some time for students to be able to adjust and sort of like navigate the Zoom environment. So if you, in the event that you want to make a quick activity, right, 5 minutes only in a breakout room, it may not always work. So that's my personal recommendation. I always try to make my activities at least 15 minutes long. And also because I also like to visit each group, and between navigating rooms, as you saw, is not very hard, but it does take a moment. So if you want to give everyone 10 minutes and you have 5 groups, you know, you're going to have to spend at least a minute in each group only. So at least that's what I personally do. A couple of other things is, before I send my students into a breakout room, I make sure that they are clear in terms of the activity. I personally use Blackboard a lot. So every time that I'm going to have an activity on breakout room, I tell my students where on Blackboard they're going to find whatever prompts I want them to discuss, whatever handouts I want them to look at, whatever activity I want them to complete. So I minimize the sharing of documents on Zoom. and I tell them everything that I want you to look at during this activity, it's going to be on this section on Blackboard. Whether you use Blackboard, whether you use any other learning management system, I always recommend doing that on a separate platform, whatever platform you use. You can share prompts via the chat, as we have been using the chat so far. Let's say that you open up the chat and you can simply copy and paste your prompts at the bottom of the chat. And in the main room, before you send them into the breakout room, you can put your prompts and tell your students, we're going to be in breakout rooms for 15 minutes, and I want you to discuss these 2 questions. And boom, you put them on the chat. And that way, before you send them into the breakout rooms, you have given them all the instructions that they need to have. That's a recommendation that's important to mention. Okay. Questions so far? Go ahead. No questions? All right. So in the last 7-8 minutes, I want to show you a couple of additional features on Zoom. The most important ones are the security ones, okay? And again, you're not going to see this right now in your Zoom because you're a participant in my meeting space. That's why I'm showing you my Zoom interface so that you can see what this looks like from a host perspective. So on the bottom of the screen, you're going to see the security button. And if I click on the security button, I'm going to see a number of different options. Let me go over them, all of them. And again, if I go ahead and click on the security button as the host, you're always going to be able to see the security button when you start your own meetings, okay? Right now, you may not see because you're a participant in my meeting, but when you're a host, you will see it. The first one is the lock the meeting. And you can think of it as the figuratively version of locking the door from inside so that no one from outside can come in. If you know that you have all of your students in the class and you're not expecting anyone else, and you want to be extra cautious about making your meeting space safe and secure and free of any unwelcome guests, you can always lock the meeting. And what that essentially does is if there is a student or anybody else who is trying to access your meeting with the URL that's correct, with the meeting ID that's correct, and with the passcode that's correct, he or she will not be able to enter because essentially you have locked the meeting, okay? So you can do that if you want to be extra cautious. Remember that when I was scheduling the meeting, I mentioned the waiting room and I said I chose not to do it. In the event that you change your mind and you say, you know what, I want to be careful, let me enable the waiting room, you can enable it during your meeting, okay? So you go into the security and then you click on enable waiting room. And essentially, instead of everyone jumping into the meeting, you're going to have a waiting room and you're going to have to see how you're going to have to admit people individually or as a group, okay? You can also hide profile pictures if that's what you want. I honestly don't use that, but in the event that you're concerned about profile pictures being shown, you can always hide those. And then allow participants to. Here's something common that I see across the board. Every time that somebody, a host, wants somebody else to share their screen, they give that person the co-host role. There's no need to do that. Remember that the co-host will have as much freedom as a host. So you want to be careful with that. So if you are teaching a class and your students have to present or do something and share their screen, you can simply go into the security and then enable the option share screen. If any of you now click on the share button, you're going to be prompted with, well, first of all, it's going to say that I'm sharing my screen. But then if I wasn't sharing my screen, it will say the host has disabled sharing screen from participants. So if I choose this, you will be able to share your screen, and that's all I want. Okay, so I always recommend this if you're teaching a class where students have to share their screen. The chat, you can always turn that off. If you want your students to pay more attention, or if you want your students to focus on a particular thing, you can always disable the chat and then enable it again. Right now it's enabled and you are all able to jump into the chat and talk to one another individually, talk to the whole group, or talk to me only. I have set it up that way, but you can always enable or disable the chat, okay? This check right here means that that is enabled, and this option right here, when there's no check, means that that is not enabled, okay? rename themselves. This is very important because most of the times, at least in my case, I have found that students join a meeting from someone else's desktop. They have a child's desktop or their partners, or sometimes from a phone. And I just see, let me just give a quick example right here. Let's say that my colleague Francine, I didn't see their name. I don't see their video. I don't know who that person is. So I normally ask them, hi, like this person with this name, can you please rename yourself? If you choose the option right here, rename themselves, they will be able to rename themselves by going into the three dots on their own video thumbnail. And they're not going to see this many options. I see this because I'm the host, but they're going to find the rename function, the rename feature, and they are able to click on it, and then they can put their correct name. When I tell my students that they have to rename themselves for attendance purposes, all of them do it automatically. So maybe that will work for you. So as a host, you can always rename people as well. So let's say that my colleague Marlene right here, pretend that she does not have her correct name. I, as the host, can always hover over her video, and in the event that she does not know how to do this, or she does not see the option, I can always go and click on rename, and I can enter a name for her, and it will be the same thing. Okay, so in the security, let me just see if there's any questions. Can both the host and participants have the share screen at the same time? At the same, literally at the same time? No, only one person will be able to show their screen at the same time. But you are able to, it creates sort of like a queue. So you hover over, let me see if I can move this right here. If you see my bar on the top, it will essentially right now say Pablo Avila sharing their screen. If I allow multiple people to share their screen, following this option right here, multiple participants can share simultaneously. You will essentially see a list and say, okay, let me take a look at Pablo's screen. Let me take a look at Mutaz's screen. Let me take a look at Avis's screen, and so forth. But literally at the same time, I don't think that would be possible. Avis.
Pablo,
Mhm.
do you have a legend of the shortcuts? For example, when you turn on the screen, turn it off, those types of things, or turn on mute. You know, we know we can press the space bar to turn on and off the mute. That's one question. And the other question, if you lock students in, and the students, I find that students early in the morning, they need to leave for a few seconds and they'll send me a note, and I'm trying to, cover something, and I'll happen to look over a chat, and I don't lock them. I just haven't done that because I never did it in person. When we were teaching in person, I thought, I always thought, it was dangerous. But if I were to lock them, would I have to go back each time and unlock
Right.
when a student needs to go out and come back
You,
in?
correct. You can unlock it at any time if you lock the meeting. It sounds though that for the example that you're explaining, you may want to use the waiting room instead. So you can
Right, I
put
do that.
so you can put anybody on the waiting room if you want. So if I show my participants panel right here, let's say that somebody needs to step out, I can simply go and then put that person in the waiting room. So in that case, it sounds like that example may be best as opposed to locking and unlocking the meeting, but you're still able to unlock the meeting if you have to. Yeah. To your other question, I don't have them on top of my head, like all of the shortcuts, but I will add that to the document, and I'll send that when I share the recording. I know Zoom has a glossary of all of the shortcuts with the keys that you have to press to enable, disable video, and all of that.
Thank
Okay.
you. Good.
Let's see, and I think I went over all of this. Remove participant in the event, knock on wood that you don't have to experience this, but in the event that you do experience an unwelcome guest into your room and you don't know what to do, in the security, there is an option to remove participant, okay? And essentially, if you click on it, it will show you a list of all of the participants that are in the meeting, and it will give you the option to the right-hand side that says remove. And essentially, that essentially kicks the person out. So you can do that in the event that you find someone is making noises or someone is doing something disruptive. And my first approach is always, can you mute yourself or try to mediate? But in the event that it's not in your control, you can always remove the person. Again, go to security, click on remove, choose the right person, and then kick them out. So that's essentially it. I think I covered everything. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I want to ask you if any of you have any questions.
Well,
Yes, can
well,
the
thank you, Pablo. And thank you very much for the presentation. And I'm going to try to go through the practice and read your recording and go over it again and try to apply it next week.
Absolutely. Thank you,
And
Albert. Now, I
having
think
a problem, I will email you.
absolutely, absolutely. I think Avis has a question. It's 2:03. I want to be respectful of your time. If you have to leave, please don't worry. I'm going to be sharing the recording later, but I can absolutely stay a few more minutes to answer any questions. Avis,
Thank you so much, Pablo. It's been
Muchísimas gracias.
very
take
thorough.
care.
My question is, sometimes the student will step out, and then all of a sudden I'll see the one name of the student and complete, and then I'll see the name again. Can they appear more than once? And what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's hard, right? Because at least personally, I haven't experienced that. I always try to, in the first day of the semester, I always give my students an overview of the entire interface. I tell them we're going to be using the chat. I tell them how to use the chat. I tell them how to use the emoji reactions, and I try to help them navigate. If you have to step out, do let me know. Here's the meeting. I send them the full invitation if I have to, so that they can join from their phone. I always encourage them, do let me know if you have problems. Sometimes they may be joining from a computer that may not have a good memory RAM, so they're not able to join. They're not able to have an optimal experience. So I tell them, if you need help, do let me know and I can figure out to get you a laptop, or maybe it's an internet connection or something. I try to help them in that way. I haven't personally experienced that, but I try to help them in that way understand the interface, so that if they come across those issues, they are able to troubleshoot by themselves as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Any other questions? Let me take a look at the chat and see if there's anything else. Great. Can a student appear more than once in one session? Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah. And you can if you have two different accounts, but it depends. If you do have the client will not allow you to join two separate meetings at the same time. So if you have your phone, for instance, you have a computer. Right now I'm using a computer, this computer, and that one. If I'm using a phone, I can join as a third person as long as I'm not using the same account. Because if I open my Zoom right now, I'm logged into my Zoom application. So it's gonna detect that I'm trying to access it, and it's gonna make me join into the same session. It's not gonna allow me to join to a different session because I'm logged in, right?
Should we allow that? If someone, for example, if you logged in and you logged in on Pablo and then on your phone, and then you log in, and I see a villa coming up by itself, and I ask, well, who is the villa, and find out it's still Pablo, but one is on the phone and one is on the computer. Should we allow that?
That really depends. What I normally do, and I haven't encountered this, but I have seen others who have encountered this problem, that students sometimes do have access to a computer, but they're not able to have voice enabled. So if you take a look, I thought I was sharing. Let me go ahead and share my screen right here. If I share my screen right now, and you see the audio on the bottom left, on the menu on the options, there is one that says switch to phone audio. And essentially what that is I'm able to still continue in the meeting in this computer, but I can use my phone as audio. So when students haven't been able to have audio in the computer for whatever reason, sometimes they have an old computer that doesn't have a microphone built in and they don't have a headsets. So they are able to view and they're able to enable their cameras, but they don't have audio. They can use this option for them to use the audio as the phone, as a microphone. So sometimes that's what I've seen other people do, but that is when you're logged into the same account, right? I don't think you may want to allow students to join from two different devices with two different identities. I wouldn't see a case for doing that, but again, we can troubleshoot on the site in case you have a particular case to discuss.
Thank you so much for answering all of these questions. And
Absolutely.
hello, I
Absolutely.
see one of my former students who's here, and now he's working in the
Thank you.
department.
Thank you, Pablo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you all so very much. I hope this was helpful. Again, we're going to continue
We have
to offer more
Very
segments.
much.
I'm going to send the recording. I'm going to send a resource document that I share in the chat, all of that via email sometime tonight or tomorrow. That way you can revisit all of this and specific segments if you would like. Okay. So without any more questions, thank you all so very much. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye. Take care.